You'd be forgiven for thinking that for the last 14 years, this country has been run exclusively by wealthy people for the benefit of wealthy people. Austerity was the Tories' excuse to cut spending on essential public services to pay for tax cuts for the rich. And even now, whilst working people are experiencing the worst cost of living crisis since the Second World War, the Tories are helping to make themselves and their friends richer than ever.
Even with the country on its knees, the Tories are finding ways to feather their own nests. The good news is there's an election coming soon. If we can persuade enough people to get out and vote, we could get a Labour government that will finally start to run this country for the benefit of working people and their families. It's easy to forget that a lot of the things working people now take for granted were introduced by Labour governments. Two of the most well-known are the NHS and the national minimum wage, but there are many others. The working time regulations introduced in 1998 meant workers were entitled to more breaks, days off, and paid holidays. Labour increased paid maternity leave to 39 weeks, and they introduced paid paternity leave. Labour also made it easier for parents, with free nursery places for 3 and 4-year-olds. Last time Labour was in government, they dramatically increased the number of NHS doctors and nurses, which helped to save hundreds of thousands of lives. They introduced the winter fuel allowance, so the elderly didn't go cold. They changed the law to give same-sex couples legal recognition and protections. And they improved the rights of trade union members. People forget that it's only because of laws introduced by a Labour government that our members have the legal right to have a rep in with them during disciplinary meetings.
Look, the reality is, as a union, we don't always agree with everything Labour does, and we don't always get everything we want. But we know that when we make a good, strong case for something that our members believe in, Labour will listen. 4 years ago, we launched our New Deal for Workers campaign. We made a strong case for better wages and protections for our members. Labour recognised the strength of our campaign, and one of the first things an incoming Labour government is going to do is implement the New Deal for working people. That would transform the lives of millions of people in this country. From day one, workers will have protection from unfair dismissal. They'll have the right to sick pay and parental leave, and they'll have the right to flexible working from day one.
Under a Labour government, employers will no longer be able to force people to work on 0-hour contracts. And if someone is on a short hours contract but regularly works longer hours, they'll have the right to switch to a contract that reflects those hours. A Labour government will look to end the terrible uncertainty that so many people currently experience by making employers compensate workers for late changes or cancellation of shifts. Labour will also help to increase job security by strengthening protections against redundancy. And they'll protect hard-won terms and conditions by ending the despicable practice of fire and rehire. Under this Tory government, a lot of employers have been allowed to get away with things that make workers feel uncertain and insecure in their job. And of course, this has had a major impact on the mental health of millions of workers. Work-related stress, anxiety, and depression are serious issues that can have a dramatic effect on people's lives. That's why, under a Labour government, mental health and safety will be given the same status as physical health and safety.
And the Labour government will also make sure that work pays for everyone. Labour will make sure that the minimum wage becomes a genuine living wage. And Labour also recognises that at the moment some workers are not paid fairly because of their ethnicity, gender or disability. And a Labour government is going to introduce ways to make sure employers take action to end pay discrimination.
What's happening price-wise and stuff like that.
The fact is, Labour understands and listens to the needs of working people. And even more than that, they understand the needs of Usdaw members.
We've campaigned long and hard for greater protection for retail workers. And while the Tories dithered and delayed taking action, Labour listened and pledged to introduce a law to make it a specific offence to assault a retail worker, pushing the government into action. But Labour will go further. They'll put an end to the £200 threshold for police investigating and prosecuting shoplifters, and enforce the banning of repeat offenders. And they'll make retail workers and our communities safer by adding 13,000 more neighbourhood police and CPSOs, with guaranteed patrols in town centres. And on the subject of town centres, Labour have outlined a proposal to turn things around, with business and unions working together to bring jobs and life back to our high streets.
This is a fantastic set of policies that will transform the lives of our members and millions of working people across the country. And we're not going to have to wait long to see the benefits. Labour have already said that if they win the next election, they're going to put forward their New Deal for working people within the first 100 days of coming into power. And the changes to make our shops and high streets safer won't be far behind. But of course, all these great things can only happen if we have a Labour government. Right now, Labour has a huge lead in the polls, but the Tories have way more MPs, and Labour will have to do even better than they did in 1997 if they're going to win, and that's a big ask. So, if Labour are going to win the next election, they're going to need our help to do it.
There are 23 key seats where we believe Usdaw members can really help make a difference. If you live in or near any of these seats, please do what you can to get out and help. Join your local Usdaw campaign team and let's win these seats for Labour. We need Usdaw volunteers to help with leafleting, door knocking and phone banks. And if you don't live near any of these 23 seats, you can still help. Labour needs to win around 350 seats to get a workable majority. Anything you can do to help Labour win any of those seats will bring us one step closer to a Labour government, one step closer to having this country run by people who understand the needs of our members and their families, and one step closer to winning a new deal for working people.